Okay, I'm the last of my family's generation that can say we grew up in this Bartlett area. The area where we live is about 2 miles down the road at Raleigh LaGrange and Sycamore View, which is not Bartlett now, but back in the day, everything we did was Bartlett. We went to church here, we went to school here, we shopped here. And some of us actually lived in the city limits. But what got me started was a chain event a series of events, 4 in particular, that got me thinking about my family and the history, and each time it happened, it was at a different phase of my life. So the first event was when I was in elementary school. I was attending Richland Elementary, and there was a kid in the grade ahead of me named Christopher Branch. And we had the same last name, but I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about his family, and I never really talked to him about it. But I always wondered if we were related. So the next time when I was in junior high at Kingsbury, my assistant principal was named Mr. Grafford Reed, and he really looked a lot like my grandfather. So how do you tell a person, hey, you look like my dead grandpa? I didn't. I found a better way, and I just told him, you look a lot like my grandfather. And we got to talking, and I told him my grandfather's name, where we lived, and he knew of my family, and he said we were related because his mother was a Branch. But I never followed up on it. I was a kid, and honestly, in junior high, to find out the principal is your family, I took it, I milked it, and from there on, I'm sure he's still living. I don't know where he is, but I'm sure it's just a matter of me talking to people and finding him. The third time was in college. So elementary, junior high, and now in college was my first day in my African American history class at Tennessee State. And the teacher is a historian, Dr. Bobby Lovett. He is a historian of West Tennessee because he's from this area. And so he goes to call roll, and of course my last name being Branch, it was at the top of the list. And I raised my hand, but so did the guy next to me. And the teacher asked, are you two related? No. Okay, well, you need to talk. Where are you from? I said, I'm from Bartlett. Okay, well, the guy next to me was from Arlington. Oh. Not too far. So I thought, what's the chances? And Dr. Lovett really encouraged us to talk. So we got to talk, and come to find out, his father and aunts and uncles attended Bartlett High School. Well, so did my aunts and uncles. And they actually knew each other. But when I go back home to talk to them, oh, we're not related to those Branches. Okay. And I didn't really question it. Well, I did question it. I questioned it so much that I started my family tree. And I started recording from me to my mom, my grandparents, and then on. And so Dr. Lovett encouraged me to visit the state archives because we were right in Nashville with it. So I would spend hours after work and after class in the archives. I was actually the person they flicked the lights on when it was time to leave. And I found a lot of death certificates that had people I knew of, people I didn't know. And how I found the people I didn't know was through the people I did know, because names I recognized. And so I printed them. I would bring them back home on the weekends and show them to my great aunt who was alive at the time, and my grandma and aunts and uncles. And everyone, they knew some people, but they didn't know some people. So I started to piece stuff together, and it got really interesting because I started finding out about people that died early and that someone didn't bother to mention about on the family tree, and that I had to explain that was still important. But then the 4th time it happened, I was an adult and I was working in Louisiana after Katrina. So because I worked for the Corps of Engineers, our mission at that time was to demolish homes that were beyond repair. And so I was in Plaquemines Parish, which I call the end of the world, because if you look at the shape of Louisiana, it's a little piece of land that sticks out at the bottom, and we were at the very end of that. And so one of the contractors that worked for me was from Beaumont, Texas, and one of the gentlemen with that contractor, his name was Billy Ray Joseph. He looked like my grandfather. So I kept having this, oh wow. So I was very close to my grandfather, so that's why it was extra spooky to me to see someone that looked like him so much. And so by this time, I knew how to talk to someone and tell them, hey, you look like my dead grandfather. And I just told him, I said, you look a lot like my grandpa. And didn't mention the fact that he was dead until he asked. And he had family in Memphis. That was last name Branch. Okay, all right. So I said I was gonna follow up on that. Unfortunately, I did not. I got back home, life happened, and, you know, got into my job and traveling, and I just failed to follow up. So I did try to follow up some years later and found out he had passed away. But I still keep in touch with his daughter and grandchildren, and I still have that on my to-do list to follow up with them. And after that, I had a good family tree going, and what I realized was that there was a lot of Branch families in the Memphis area, and Brooks families, because those are the two surnames that I'm really following. But I have not been able to find a connection to them as far back as Civil War. I've traced the Brooks line to the Civil War, but I haven't found any connection with the other Brookses in the area. But that doesn't mean we're not related. So one family I've been able to connect with in Ellendale, which is not far from here, I should have known about, but for some reason, after my grandfather's generation, people just stopped keeping in touch. So they're two brothers, they're dentists, and I found him because I chose him to be my dentist. He was close to work. And as soon as I come in for my first appointment, he wanted to know who I was, where I was from, and the minute I started talking about who my family was, he knew who I was. And he started calling people by nicknames, and in my book, that means, yeah, you know us. And so we're close now, and they actually attend Fullview Baptist Church, so it's, yeah, I should have known about them, especially being in this area. I found out that there is a street called Brooks Branch Road in Arlington, and that's one of the Branch Brooks families that I have not been able to connect to, but like I said, still hope. And so I talk about the history, the oral history that I've been told about the land that we live on. Like, again, I mentioned this at the corner of Sycamore View and Raleigh LaGrange. There's a street called Joe Brooks, and that street is where we are. And that's where we've been since 1877 when that land was purchased. Wow. So to give you an idea of how big it was before, I made note of the businesses now that have purchased land that family members have sold, and one of them is the Sycamore View Church of Christ. That whole strip of land was one of my great-grandmother's siblings. Sports Care was another strip of land, and down at the businesses along Sycamore View, which is, I think, a carpet place, a car repair shop, and a hair braiding shop. And then at the very end is Boomerang Car Wash, and that was ours too. So everybody's been told about how Joe Brooks acquired this land from his Aunt Mariah. Well, Joe Brooks is my grandfather's mother's father, so my great-great-grandfather. And they didn't know anything beyond that. They just knew that he got it from his Aunt Mariah when she passed. Well, I looked into who she was, and I found her on Ancestry. And she was married to a Spencer Brooks, because I found where she applied for his pension in 1890. He served in the U.S. Colored Troops. So I thought, okay, well, his name was Brooks, so apparently I was related to him, and found her surname looking under his records. And yeah, I requested a copy from the National Archives in 2011, and I found out that he served with the 61st Regiment of the U.S. Colored Troops, and he mustered in Collierville in 1862. Yes, 1862, that's wrong. And when he mustered in, his application has him it lists Bartlett as his home. So 1862, he's in Bartlett. But 1861, on her affidavit for marriage, she put that they married in 1861 in Marshall County, Mississippi, on a plantation. So then that digs a little deeper. Well, which plantation? Because Marshall County, I went to the pilgrimage a couple of years ago, and there was many. So I thought I was on the right track with one of the large homes, beautiful homes in Holly Springs, but I was on the wrong track, and I'll get to that. So my family, I go back and I tell them what I find, and I tell them about Spencer. Nobody knew about Spencer. And it's a shame because he served in the war. You know, a lot of people hold that near and dear to their hearts, and we had no idea about it. And I just tried to get as much information as I could about him. And I actually had my nephew use him on the Black History Month program that they had in their classroom. And the teacher loved the little bulletin, the display that we created so much that she left it up for the rest of the year. And he was excited about that. So, to fast forward to now, most recently, so remember 2011, I requested the pension files from the National Archives, and it gave me a little bit of information, but something told me that there was more, and that I needed to actually go there and see the file and you know, distinguish between what I received and what they left out. You never know, somebody may have had a bad day and didn't scan everything. Sure enough, I get there. So before I get to that, my trip to DC was by way of Philadelphia. My job decided to honor me at the Black Engineer of the Year Award conference in Philadelphia for my service and my volunteerism in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Yes. For the past 10 years, almost 10 years, I've been a camp mentor at the engineering and construction camp down in Vicksburg, which we get about 40 students from all over the U.S. and some from Japan, and just wherever there is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers district. We usually get students from there because their parents are part of the Society of American Military Engineers. And so that's what the camp is under. And I've been doing that for about 10 years, and it's good. I love it because the kids, when they come in there, they sometimes don't know what they want to do. Sometimes they think they want to go into engineering. Sometimes they know. But the ones that don't, by the end of the week, they usually change their mind. I think they said about 75 to 80% of the students end up choosing engineering or some kind of science-related discipline in their college. So I'm excited about that every year. And this year is in the third week of June, so I'll be going again. And I looked at this, the next meeting, I'll be going for the camp during that.
That's okay.
So when I found out I was going to Philadelphia, I knew that I was close to the DC area. My best friend is stationed at the Pentagon, well, was stationed at the Pentagon. She's in Korea now. And I knew this would be my opportunity to tour the White House, to see the Pentagon, to see all the monuments and things. And so I decided to take a few extra days. And it was more like 5. They understood, and I told them exactly what I'd be doing. I mean, it doesn't matter, but they knew that I was gonna maximize on that free trip. So I get up there, I receive my award. The next day, I take the Amtrak down to DC. And the day after that was my day to do my sightseeing. And I went to the archives first. And me being the planner that I am, I allotted 2 hours for the archives. Well, I ended up spending all day because I get there, I request this entire military file, and I get goosebumps because I have more information than I thought I was going to get. I got all the information about how he looked, how tall he was, and especially when it came to Mariah's pension, there were depositions that people had to fill out to prove that she was married to him because they didn't have a license. They were slaves. So they had to prove that they were married. They had to prove that she wasn't married to anyone else. You know, all of this stuff proving her character, that she didn't sleep around and stuff like that. It got really detailed. I was really shocked. And one of the things that really took me by surprise was the fact that his slaveholder's son was one of the people that filled out a deposition. And I thought, okay, this is 1890. This is 30 years removed from the Civil War and when he left Marshall County. That was in my view, that tells me that was a different relationship because I didn't think anyone kept in touch. And for her to have him fill out this deposition, and he gave not only his name, his father's name, and where he knew Spencer from. He said he knew him his whole life. And this man, he was 49 years old, so Spencer was older than him. And he said Spencer had lived there his whole life. And other documents that I have stated that he lived there his whole life. So I'm verifying a lot of stuff that I thought I knew. And it just really gave me goosebumps. So now I'm at the point where I'm researching the slaveholders family, and one of the things that I found was that his parents, well, it's in here somewhere, his parents have, okay, Spencer, no, this would be Spencer's brother. Well, I'm not sure exactly who it is because I just found this out, but some people that I have recognized are listed as slaves on some wheels. And I'm tracing it back further and further, and I think I'm gonna end up in North Carolina, but I got off track, so let me find out where I was. Okay. Well, yeah, no, I was right on track. Okay, so the plantation was about 4 miles from Collierville, and I was looking at a map today. 4 miles from Collierville is just east of Olive Branch, across the state line, so they weren't far at all. And I think about how Spencer got to Bartlett of all places, because at that time, when the time period between 1861 and 1862, there was the Battle of Corinth in the spring of 1862. And I was watching a special on Channel 10 about the Battle of Corinth, and one of the things that they said, a lot of things give me goosebumps, but this really did, was that after Corinth fell to the Union, people in the area heard about it, and they knew that the Union was starting to come further and further into the South, and so the slaves in the area just left. So I think that's what happened with Spencer. I don't think he escaped or anything, because he left with his children and his wife. And other people from the family left with them, and they ended up here. So that one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how did they get here, because some people ended up at the contraband camps in Corinth, which is further east, but I think with where they were, it would be out of the way, you know, freedom would be more north than east. And so I think they just came north, and for some reason they settled here. So that's pretty much my story. That's where I am now. I'm open to
I do. You said you went to the archives in Washington. Can you just walk in and say to a clerk, get everything about my family? How does that work?
You have to fill out a slip. They pull at certain times of the day. So you have to know exactly what file you're trying to pull and just request it.
You do that in advance, or?
You just, when you get there, and if it's before the time they pull, then you'll get it, but if it's after, you'll have to wait till the next 2-hour time period when they pull.
But you have to know the file number, or?
No, you just have to, like in this case, I knew Spencer served in the U.S. Colored Troops, so I put down as much as I knew about him, and they found the file and pulled it for me.
For real? Wow.
And I have the
I wanna
actual
do that.
documents in my hand.
He probably went to the army
He did.
right after Corinth fell.
Yes, that's what I'm suspecting.
I've got 3 others.
So this is,
So he didn't lose his life in war or anything like that?
he actually was medically discharged honorably discharged because he had a spinal disease. And I'm not sure if scoliosis or something, but he got discharged right before, 6 months before the war ended, and they were listed, they mustered into Louisiana, and that's where he was discharged from. So I followed the trail of that unit and found out, you know, where he was happened to be where they were, not happened, but that's exactly where they were at that time.
April, you wondered how he got from Corinth to here, Bartlett.
Well, I won't say Holly Springs, it's just right across the state line from Collierville.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But most likely he walked. Now Nicholas Gotten of this house, he was wounded at Shiloh
Okay.
and eventually joined his unit way down south. And he walked the whole way. And that's just the way they did.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, maybe
Well, this was
10,
after Shiloh too.
20 miles.
Oh, I think it's a little further than that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
I drive
probably more like
everywhere.
30, at least.
Back then, we didn't have the roads we have today.
Yeah.
No, it is.
It's-
I'm
There
talking
was
about
Indian
just
trails and
driving.
pig paths.
Within the CHG, and you know, it's a long ways
It
to
is
go
long
there.
way,
So one of the things I'm interested in is an old map of the trails in this area, you know,
Uh-huh.
just to see how people got around. Because we
The-
know about Stage Road.
Would the Shelby County Historical Commission have some old maps like that, you think?
Yeah, there's a bunch of maps that I got on the line, and I could email you a couple. It's every so many years, and it's a full state, and a little bit of Mississippi occasionally.
Okay,
But
well,
yeah.
this is
Some
4
level
miles
it
from
could help.
Collierville, so
Yeah.
that, it might cover that area too.
Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions? April, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.